Yep, I've been snorting that fairy dust. If you're interested to see how much time, effort, and money it takes to upgrade to adult arrows, stay tuned. Alright, so just for comparison, we'll check out my old setup. Shooting these Velocity 340 spine from Gold Tip, and I actually think that these are spined correctly for my bow right now. I'm shooting 60 pounds at like 28.5 inch draw, and they shoot pretty straight. But the problem is, even though we got fletchings on this, Illuminoc, and 100 grains of Grim Reaper broadheads on the front, when I weigh these, I only get a total of 410 grains, which is exactly what the Ranch Fairy's talking about, shooting a Twizzler with flappers on the front. I've had this setup stick in the shoulder of at least two deer, and I'm just fed up with it. I'm ready to move on to adult arrows with cut-on contact broadheads. So I went to the local pro shop and I picked up a pack of these. They're Gold Tip Hunter Pros, 300 spine, and I also found this in the bargain bin. And this is the only arrow, there was two of these, but they were the only two arrows they had that were 250 spine. They're Carbon Express Mach 5s. And I had considered using these and testing these out, but when you weigh the Hunter Pro, we're looking at 302 grains, and this is an arrow that's built to be durable enough for hunting. And then you got this Mach 5 Carbon Express. It's around 250 grains, so 50 grains less, and it's a smaller profile. This is built for speed, and I don't think this is built for really hunting. I'm not confident that it's going to be, it's going to have the structural integrity, especially when you're loading up the front with a bunch of weight. So it just so happens with the coronavirus right now, very difficult to find arrows in a pro shop and even online. There's only a certain companies that are selling them online and will ship to your house. So I'm left with these Hunter Pros, which I'm not really mad about it, but I wish I would have been able to get some 250 spine something. But it looks like I'm just going to have to settle with whatever this 300 gives me. I am a little nervous it's not going to give me the proper weight that I need. He always talks about the magic number being 550 grains. If you can get up to 550 grains, it's going to perform really well. But we'll see what shoots well out of this. I got the Ranch Fairy test kit from Ethics Archery they have 200 to 300 in 25 grain increments. These 5 here. I also have a 125. They also send you some collars in this test kit that are about 15 grains. So this is close to 150 grains, and I got a bunch of 100 grains because that's what I used to be shooting. So we'll try out all these and we'll give it a shot. Just to be ahead of the game, I also bought some of these inserts. They're weighted inserts, so whatever broadhead I decide on using, it could be like 100 grains, and I can figure out, I could cut off as much of this. This is anywhere from 125 to 200 grain insert, so I can cut off what I need and use this with pretty much any broadhead that I decide to use. So the first thing I've already done to one of these arrows. I need to scrape off all the fletchings, and I'm going to need to cut this so that I can shoot these with all these different field tips down here. So I can show you how I do that first. And I'm doing all this at home. I don't have any kind of bow shop or anything like that. I'm just using tools that I have, in my basement, just a typical anybody would have in their garage. So you should be able to do this all on your own as well. Alright, so we'll pull one of these out. And the first thing we're going to do is get rid of the fletchings. Super easy. All you really need is a utility knife. Just take them off, cut them off. And you want to cut all the glue off too. When you do take a sharp utility knife, you will start to shave off some of the carbon. It's not a huge deal. Just make sure you're not getting into it and gouging it too much. Alright, so the next thing is going to be remove these knocks, these brass knocks, and actually I can't even, if I try to twist this, I can't get it at all. So I don't know what they did to those, but even trying to line up fletchings is going to be difficult with these. So we're going to remove them, and this is another Ranch Fairy trick. You take the open end and a drill bit, and you put it in with the flat end in here. This is a 15/64 drill bit. Depends on what size your arrow is, but it fits right down nicely in there without much wiggle room. And then if you listen to this, you probably heard it hit the back. So what we're going to do is kind of take it up here, get the drill bit up here, and then whip it down like that. And we're going to do that multiple times until that knock starts to pop off. Okay, there it went. Alright, so now we have both sides have a bare carbon shaft, and at this point you can spin your arrow. You can get one of these arrow spinners. This is a Pine Ridge Archery one. It's one of the cheaper ones, but it's really useful. I'll put a link in the description for one of these if you want to pick one up. You can spin your arrows now, and you can spin them later once you put a broadhead on them. But right now, what you're looking for when you spin your arrow is you want to check both ends. You want to look at them really closely and see if either end is wobbling at all. And the side that's wobbling, you would want to be on the front of your arrow. It's more important for the back of your arrow to be straight. That will keep your arrow a lot straighter in flight. So check that now before you go to cut, because if you do have one side that's wobbly, you can try to cut that off, respin it after you cut it, and maybe you got rid of some of that wobble, and you don't have to worry about it. So next step is going to be cutting them, and I'll show you. Most people get this done at their pro shop, but this is something you can do at home with just generic tools, and I'll show you how I do it. I like my arrows to be at 29.5 inches carbon to carbon, so we'll line this end up, and then we'll mark that at 29.5. And either you want to mark it a little bit longer than 29.5, or don't cut your line all the way off, because we'll end up squaring both sides of this arrow, and you want to leave yourself a little bit extra to be able to square each side. Alright, so I got it set up in the vise, and what we're going to use to cut it is just a Dremel with a cutoff wheel. So this doesn't have to be perfect. We'll square it all up and make it perfect later, but you do want to be careful, because this dust is, it's not good for your lungs, so make sure you put on a mask, preferably one that fits really close to your face and actually filters. Alright, so really all I'm using to square this is a disc sander, and what I did was take a flat piece of wood, made sure it was straight. I used this square, made sure that was perfectly square with respect to the disc, clamped that into place. This table can also move up and down, so I checked to make sure the table was square. If all that is square, then you should be good, and I'll just run this arrow up against this. Make sure it's flat up against the table and the wood, and I'll spin it as it touches that, it'll square each end. And as I'm doing this, I just want to make sure I'm checking the length while I do it. Make sure I don't go too far or don't leave too much. You will also see when I do this, there's going to be like a bunch of hairs that show up on the opposite edge that's being, ground off. Basically, if you just spin that, and when you're getting close to the right length, you're just going to want to lighten up on your pressure into the disc, and that'll take care of all those. So let's, again, I'm wearing this mask, and let's go ahead and square these ends. Alright, so this arrow is now ready for nock, which I'm just putting this plastic nock in for now. It's easy to adjust, and we will go through the nock tuning process later. It's also ready for an insert, and these inserts are fairly tight when they go in, but not tight enough. So we will have to put some of this, it's Cool Flex low temperature hot melt adhesive. So this stuff is really good for carbon arrows because you don't have to get it as hot to glue it in. And heat is not good for carbon arrows, so you want to be careful with that. But we are going to glue these in and test all these points and figure out which point weight is good for this spined arrow and the poundage that I'm shooting. So it's actually fairly simple to glue these in. Basically, we're going to I'll take one of these points, screw that into this insert just as a little bit of a heat sink, and really we just take a lighter. We'll heat this up until the point starts getting warm in my hand. That'll tell me that we're still okay. As long as you can still hold this, you're not going to damage the carbon arrow. We'll heat this up a little bit, and then we'll grab this. We'll heat up a little bit so it's kind of melted, and just rub a little bit on. The place where you really want it is up near the front. The back doesn't matter as much. This is where the tolerances are that will fit and seal everything up. So you want it up front mostly. So go ahead and do that. Alright, so you can see some squeezes right out. You can take and wipe that right off, especially if it's still warm. Take that right off and let that cool off. Make sure everything is tight up against, you want that insert all the way up against the arrow so it's tight, and let it cool, and it should solidify in there and won't move. Alright, so now I have two arrows ready for bare shaft paper tuning, and I already had one done just to make sure I could do everything in my shop, but the time it took me to do this one while filming was about half an hour from start to finish. That included, defletching, removing the old nock, cutting and squaring the arrow, throwing in a new nock, and then gluing the insert in. So 30 minutes is not too bad, and I think it would take even less than 30 minutes per arrow if you did them all at the same time. So, we don't have much time invested, and so far the only money I invested was to buy this hot melt, which I felt like I needed in the past anyways, so it was like $5 shipped to my house. Can't complain about that. And everything else I think that anybody could get their hands on or borrow from someone, or go over to someone's house and use. So we have very little time and very little money invested in getting set up correctly, in my opinion. So we're ready for paper tuning now. So in the next video, we'll see how much time and money that takes. Thanks for watching. Be one with the outdoors.